everybody to episode number 2 of HealthyU. And I didn't even mean to rhyme, and I just did. But I hope you guys are having just an amazing day. And I'm so honored and excited that you are joining me today, because we've got an amazing episode. I've got my awesome new friend, Erika Wirth, here, and we're going to be just learning lots of great things from her. And so, again, I just want to thank you for being on here. And again, my name is Dawn Funk. I'm coming to you from sunny Florida. And Erika is all the way over on the West Coast, and she's going to share a little bit about herself here in just a second. But I hope you have some type of journal if you're at home or listening somewhere where you can take notes. If not, then make sure you revisit this again later. I always think it's good to listen to things more than once. That's the teacher in me, because things really sink in. And again, today's going to give you a lot of value, a lot of just wisdom. And, we've got a great speaker on here today. So with that, I want to just give an overview of what our topic is today. So today, Erika is going to be talking about uncomplicating your relationship with your body and food. And what I love, when I asked her, what her title was, what it is that she considers herself, I think this is so unique and I love it. She's a body partnership coach. And, I just think that is something that so many people struggle with today, is that relationship with their body. And so she's going to, again, just be giving us a lot of tips and insights. And she's got a story, her own personal story and journey that she's going to reflect on. And so, Erika, why don't you just take a couple minutes, let our listeners or viewers, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, just get to hear a little bit more about you, and then we'll start rolling in with the questions that we've got today.
Well, thank you, Dawn, for having me on today. It's a pleasure to speak to your audience and to share this time with you. And I partly wish that I was over there on the sunny beach with you, sitting across from you. So it's sunny here in Portland today, but it has felt like winter still all the way into May. So not the same warmth that you have going on there. But yes, so I live in Portland, Oregon. I am a stepmom to a 6-year-old and a wife. And then I have my first baby on the way, 10 weeks away from the due date. And really excited. Pregnancy has been such a wild ride in going even deeper into body partnership that, it's like, you think you have it down with, taking care of your body and your mental health practices and all these things. And then you get another life curveball and you realize you have a whole new set of things to learn. And pregnancy really has been that. So it's kind of been its own little mini school. And so fascinating how it's touched different areas. I think it's almost the little soul's way of like, Mom, get your house in order before I come, kind of thing. Whether that's in relationships or just even in something that I have a lot of room to work with, is just like my need to be in control of everything and my lack of surrender. And there's nothing like motherhood that's going to teach you that. And so I think that's one of the biggest things too, that I've just been really diving into and preparing for, because there is so much. I mean, the baby's cooking in there, but there's so much you don't have control over or know exactly how your labor is going to go or any of that. And so, just preparing for the surrender and getting everything in order from not just like the physical things that you get in order for a baby to come, but like relationally and for our family and like the dynamic and the environment, the energy you're bringing the baby into, like so aware of that now. So
that's awesome. Well, and as a mom of 4, I know I was telling you before we started that I had 4 kids in 5 years. And so I can totally relate to that. And just again, the need, I'm a control freak too. So I definitely connected with you on that. And you definitely learn very quickly that, okay, there's some things that I can't control. And I ended up having 2 C-sections. One was an emergency C-section. And as much as I wanted to control having this nice, calm, birth, it was like, nope, that just wasn't how it was going to happen with one of my children. So I'm so excited for you. And
Thank you.
so let our listeners know too, just a little bit more about you and what you do. And of course, you guys that are listening, we're going to have just some ways that you can connect with Erika in the show notes. She's got a great website. I told her earlier, I was stalking that earlier today, and she's got all kinds of great resources and things that can help you in your wellness journey. But let's just let everyone know a little bit more too about who you are in terms of what you do and how you serve people and help them.
Yeah. So my podcast was kind of the starting place of Worth Wellness, my business, and that it's almost been 2 years. So 3 months into being married, I hit like my rock bottom health crisis, which manifested as in chronic fatigue. I had massive digestive issues, hormonal dysregulation, thyroid problems. And I hit this rock bottom point to where I was missing tons of work. I remember the first year of my marriage, I was in bed every single holiday. I went to no holiday events, and I was at the time 25, I want to say. And I was like, this is crazy to be this sick and be in the prime of my life, So, but I really had to dig deep because I had always cared about my health. I had been so passionate from a very young age, and I guess I should say fascinated with health and wellness. And that's taken all different twists and turns, but I considered myself to be someone who really did prioritize their health. So in some ways, it was a huge blow to the ego to land myself so sick at age 25. And my husband actually had been in a car accident and had really severe back trauma and back issues. And so he started seeing a naturopath who did ozone injections because he had tried everything else and he was in really bad shape. So that was kind of my first introduction to an alternative healing route, because growing up, I had struggled with some weird stomach things, some just weird things that the Western medicine world had no answers for. My mom would take me, I'd be like in so much pain. She'd take me to the ER. They'd run all the tests. They're like, oh, she's fine. And I was like, clearly I'm not, but they had no answers. And even because as a teen, I struggled with disordered eating. And once again, the only resources my mom had was the Western medical system, and they really had hardly anything for me. So when I hit this crisis in my 20s, and we had just started to kind of open the world to another way, I thought like, okay, I need to give this a try. And so I started to see the same naturopath. And I tell this story often now because I didn't realize it was going to be important, but I remember at my first appointment with the naturopath, I gave him the lowdown of my symptoms, and all of that. And mainly I was there because I couldn't eat food because the way my stomach was so messed up. And the first thing he asked me after I got done, saying all my woes, is he's like, do you have emotions that you are just refusing to look at, that you've like locked away in some basement that you won't open up? And I was like, I thought you're a doctor. Like, why are you asking me this? And I thought that was just so strange, but he was really into traditional Chinese medicine and trained in that, and helped me understand the connection between emotions and imbalances in the body and how that can show up physically. And different areas are associated with different emotions that are stuck in your body, that have not healthily moved through. And that was really the case. Not only that, but I think what really led to that ultimate health crisis was a massive lack of boundaries. And for like, yes, okay, I was eating healthy food and I was working out on a regular basis, but my boundaries and relationships, I was very codependent. I was just like the yes lady to everything. And it reached a point where my body just had to say like, no, I'm going to stop you if you don't stop. And so that is kind of what started my inquiry into this whole new way of really addressing the whole thing, because it wasn't just that I couldn't eat food. It's like, that's not normal. Like, what's going on beneath that? And So as I started to kind of put the pieces together, and I worked with the functional medicine doctor, and we ran tests, I had a parasite and all these different things. And I did get on the protocols and all of that. I also realized that I had hardly any tools. And I think this is not uncommon for people my age. Um, as a kid, I didn't have tools to regulate intense emotions. I had no one taught me grounding techniques.
Right.
Nobody taught me deep breathing. Like,
Yeah.
so it was it was not even on my radar to know what to do to deal with
Mm.
intense feelings that felt like I had always had really intense anxiety and
Mhm.
had no way to really move that through. So I just stored a lot of it in my body. And so part of the process was, yes, taking care of my physical health and slowing down. And um, I ended up losing my job, I think hugely in part to not being able to show up for it
Mm.
because of how sick I was. But that ended up being a huge gift because it was a soul sucking job. It was not meant for me whatsoever. And it was probably a month. I want to say it was a month after I started the podcast that I lost my job.
Mm.
And yeah, then I began on this journey to kind of put in one place and to bring people along the journey of what it looked like to heal holistically,
Mm.
your whole person. And how what I've really come to find is that when you first work on your relationship with your body, like a side effect is that a lot of these symptoms resolve when you learn how to care for your body as a friend,
Yes.
which I had seen my body as an enemy for so long because it was this problem I had to fix that was
Mhm.
causing me pain. Whether that was like the disordered eating or later with all these chronic health conditions. And once I realized like fighting with my body will not heal it, like I need to find a different way. So that's what, yeah, led me to develop body partnership coaching and continue to share on the podcast what I've been learning, and brings me to today. That's a long answer to your
Oh, but
question.
it's so good. And I'm sitting here writing down so many notes because I just have to really say how much I appreciate your vulnerability and just openness and sharing some of these things, because I think a lot of our people listening, especially the anxiety piece and just the pent up emotions, I think a lot of people can relate to this. And I love your boldness and your braveness about sharing about the truth bombs about Western medicine. And, I shared this with you before. Like, I have a similar story, and that, I went to doctor after doctor after doctor. I knew something wasn't right, but unfortunately, things were not showing up on tests.
Mhm.
And it starts to make you think that you're losing your mind and that you're crazy. And the other unfortunate thing, and I don't know if this happened to you, Erika, but the doctors that I were going to, they either wanted to run tests or put me on antidepressants, put me on, medications. And my gut was saying, no, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to get sucked into the pharmaceutical, world and take a pill. Like, I know that there are some root causes here. And so, I've been on a similar journey. You said something, gosh, it's like sometimes I do these podcasts, I'm like, okay, like this is meant for me. And I know that it's meant for other people too, but like, one thing, well, you said several great things, but one thing that I loved was you said, you saw your body as an enemy that you had to fix. And, I can relate to that because I'm a fixer. I think a lot of us as moms, especially, or even husbands, we have this kind of innate, character, trait that we want to fix things. We want to be problem solvers. And while that works great in your career, that's not so great when it comes to your body. And, and so anyway, so I love that you shared that too. And then what was the other thing? The what your doctor asked you. I see a naturopath now, and I've also transitioned to those type of doctors the last several years. But like I've never had a doctor ask me that. And it's so interesting. It's like $1 million question, because that to me, when you said that, I was like, gosh, it's so true that, when you think about it, because I'm reading a book right now that kind of touches on the exact thing, that our bodies can store these emotions and they can manifest in weird symptoms and things that, you know, we perceive as threats. And so, so anyway, so you touched on a lot of things that I know there are people right now going, this is me, I can relate to this. And so, you know, so I would just love for you, you know, to maybe keep us moving, you know, and I think you are through the questions I'm going to ask you, but I'm so excited to hear how you went from that phase to where now, as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm like, gosh, this woman, you know, you are just such a beacon of hope. And, you know, for a lot of people listening. So, you know, so let's just move right into this first question. Of course, you're going to take us on this timeline, right? We're going to get to hear the whole thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm chomping at the bit here, but okay. So, you know, so what did having a complicated relationship with your body and food, because you touched on, you know, something that you struggled with when it came to food, you know, what did having that complicated relationship with your body and the food, what did that feel like for you? Because again, I think a lot of people are going to connect with your emotions and your story.
Yeah. Okay. That is such a good way to ask it. So I would say food. So I've also been a foodie my whole life. I mean, I remember cooking from such a young age, cooking my whole family food. I had always been just really interested in, it was like an expression of creativity for me as a kid to be in the kitchen and creating my own recipes, pretending to write cookbooks, you know, as little, like things like that.
Yeah.
And then when I was 14, that's when things like first got complicated because I became aware of something in my home environment was like off, like something was not right. And it became very evident to me that that was the case. And just a really chaotic, dysfunctional home environment. And so instead of food being fun, it became one of the only things I felt like I could control and manipulate. And it became like being able to control that became a way for me to feel safe when I didn't feel like I had, like I don't know if we touched on this at the beginning. I can't remember if it was before the chat or on the call. But yeah, like not having any other resources to navigate that or any other people to really talk to. I mean, it's interesting, but I lived in a very isolated world as well. I was homeschooled, which I'm not saying anything against being homeschooled, but it left my circle of people to like confide in and like safe people very, very small outside of my home. And so I just went completely inward. And that was kind of when it first got complicated. It was also like physically, I had always been a very active kid, but then all of a sudden, physical fitness also became a way to try to control my body because that was one of the only things. It's so funny because now, you know, we talk about the only thing you really have control over is like the choices you make, like your life, like, and that can be a great thing. But then on the same token, when it's like, I felt like my whole world was out of control. So I would try to manipulate and control my body in a way that was actually really harmful to myself. That was kind of the other extreme of that when I was a teen. So that's when it first got complicated. But then later, I mean, I went to therapy and got the disordered eating symptoms that were really concerning. Like I got that under control to a degree, as far as I could with what I knew at the time. I mean, I think for a lot of us, our healing kind of unravels in stages as we get access to new information or we find new guides and healers and tools. But in my 20s, I would say it was less disordered, but it was still very controlling. It was very much about like, how can I get what I want out of my body instead of body, what do you need? And what do you desire? And so I was a runner, a long distance runner, and I would push myself, 5 a.m. in the morning. I mean, I also had insomnia since I was a teenager. And so I usually just felt like I was half in another world most of the time, like tons of brain fog because I wasn't sleeping. Yeah. And so I would just push myself because I thought that's what I need to do to make this body behave is I need to work it really hard and, restrict what I'm eating. I mean, just like even thoughts, I don't know if someone has experienced disordered eating at all, like they might relate to the whole thing of how you're just always thinking about food all
Mhm.
the time. And I remember when I would talk to, as a teen, people who had been on the other side of an eating disorder, or even the counselors and therapists, I was like, is it possible to not have to think about food every second of every day? Because that to me actually feels like it's preventing me, like that's not my purpose in life. Like I know I
Right.
can create things, there's things I want to accomplish, but if every waking thought is about what I'm going to eat next and how
Mhm.
many calories is in it and like all of that, it
Yeah.
takes up so much mental space. And so, I mean, that was like a huge thing when I, in hindsight, finally realized like, I don't think about food all day long. Like,
Mhm.
whoa, I never thought that was possible. When people told me it could be possible, I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, I think you're kidding. Like, there's no
Yeah.
way. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what it continued to look like into my adult years when I say complicated relationship with my food and body. And just, I mean, I think the other layer that is even harder for some people to look at is how we interact with others and put our body last. And we say yes, yes, yes when our body says no to commitments, to uh yeah, I mean it can be anything, but I know for me as a stepmom, I at the time, my husband's son was 3 years old when we got married, and his mom was a lot less in the picture. My husband has full custody of his son, and so there was this like expectation I was going to swoop in and be this hero stepmom and take on all the responsibilities in like a minute, of being a mom. And I just said yes to it because I thought I had to.
Yeah.
And my body like hugely was saying no, like you can't do everything by yourself. But I just didn't hear it because I just pushed through. I thought I had to do it.
Mhm.
So that was that's I think another way we complicate our relationship with our body is when we think that what it says we have to argue with and do
Yeah.
something different or suppress instead of just
Mhm.
listen to it. It is so much simpler to be like, oh, I feel like today I need yoga, not a HIIT workout, and to listen. Like you just
Yeah.
feel so much better. It's so simple, but it sounds so simple, but it can take, I mean, it can take years to get there. Like that's how it was for me.
Yeah. Well, and I just think like I admire you so much because I'm sitting there listening to you and I'm like, gosh, I was that person in my 30s and my 40s that just pushed through. I'm like, you suck it up, buttercup. That's always been, kind of my expression. And it took my body really shutting down when I got sick through my whole breast implant illness journey to finally wake me up to really, like you said, I wrote it down, like, instead of what can I, what did you say? What can I get from my body instead of, giving my body what it needs? And so, like, for me, I've really had a whole different perspective and listening to my body now instead of forcing my body to do things like I've always done. In fact, I kind of wore it as like a badge of honor that, what, I could just crank and do things and push myself. I mean, I would stay up till 2 a.m., stay up as late as I had to in order to get things done. And then all of a sudden, when I got sick, a few years ago, it's like, no, I had never experienced anything like that in my life where my body literally was just shutting down and just saying, you can't treat me like this anymore. And the blessing of that, and I love that you look at your, struggles as blessings now too, is that now I listen to my body, and it's interesting
Mm,
because just like we want to be good listeners to our friends, and when you have your baby, like, as they grow up, you want to be a good listener. It's like, why is that such a goal with people but not with our own bodies? And
yeah.
so, to your point, and if any of you guys are watching this and you see that my hair is still wet, it's because I was listening to my body today. I went to the beach and got in a little hour and a half little break, toes in the sand. I'm a big believer in grounding, so I love that you talked about that. And I just think you bring up such a good point too, that a lot of people, and maybe you're one of them listening to this, that you're like, I know that I've got control issues. I know that I need to slow down. I know that things don't feel quite right. but yet you don't really know the strategies, or you don't know some of the maybe natural ways to deal with that. And so, I've done a lot of research myself too on just the powerful effects of getting out in the sun, grounding. I mean, that's part of the reason, honestly, that I moved to Florida, because I like to go, go, go. And the beach is my one place that I can really, truly relax. And so, I love that you touched on that. But anyways, just kind of moving on in your journey. So, share, continue with your journey and talk about, how you went from trying to fix your body to then becoming a friend with it and working in harmony with your body instead of against it. So your story is just absolutely amazing. So I'm excited to hear how this just continues.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I would say it's interesting because when I talk about with people, like my process and kind of what I did, like, do know that it's going to look different for every person. And
Yes.
the whole point of body partnership is that you don't have to craft your healing path to look just like someone else's. And I think even if you have some of the same similar symptoms, like, they're probably showing up for a different reason, because all of our life paths and journeys are very different. For me, I think one of the most important things that honestly, I think happened naturally as my body started to feel safe. So, like, creating safety in your body in order for it to start to tell you why it's manifesting an illness is really, really key. And that goes back to, like, the anxiety piece, is that I didn't have ways to bring just my nervous system into a state of calm enough and my body to feel safe enough to start to drop in childhood trauma stuff, like relationship stuff, like to drop in the deeper, harder things to look at. And so not only was I, taking supplements and listening to the wisdom of my naturopath, but I started to incorporate a daily yoga practice in the mornings where that was such a great way for me to really take inventory on how I felt, because yoga is all about, like, how do you feel today in this morning, in the moment? Like, where's your soreness? Where's your stiffness? And blending that with the breath. I also started I'd always loved being outside, but like you said, really prioritizing being in nature and, like, as much as possible. So, I started to, like, go sit outside on the ground, like every single meal I would eat outside on the ground in the dirt, just to try to, like, expand the time I could be on the earth as much as possible. And that was huge. I also just filled my mind with, I started reading books on the power of mindset and, like, all the things that I was really curious about beyond just, like, the symptoms. I think it's really important too to explore, whether that's podcasts or books, other teachers that are helping you to rewire your mind. Because before the pre-chat, you and I were talking about how when you spend, like, over a decade living with always some sort of physical problem, like, it does become a way of life. Like, sick becomes a way of life. Yep. And it's actually comfortable in a sense, or I guess I should say, what I've heard people describe it is, it's familiar. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's familiar. And so we'll stay there until we realize that, like, feeling well is worth it. And there are things that come with feeling well. It's no longer you're out for things you don't want to do. And I think that for me, I had to come to terms with, there was ways that staying sick was actually serving me. And, like, not being able to go to any holiday events. Well, there was relationships and things there that I also didn't want to be a part of, if I'm really being honest. But I didn't want to say that. Like, as a newly married, I was trying to find my way in this new family with all these different dynamics, and it was intimidating to me. And so it's like, okay, if I'm well, I'm going to have to just say, no, I can't do that, or no, I don't want to do that. Or can we think of a different way to spend our holiday, or whatever, to my husband, or, so it's like realizing that I'm willing to face whatever it is, that being healthy will, like, coming to that place where I'm willing to face it and actually speak up for myself and say what I want and say what I need, and not just have to be sick all the time, so that I don't have, I get like to step out, a pass from engaging with the hard stuff of life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that it was also a process of diving deeper into that. But going back to what I said at the beginning, like, I think it's really important to first establish, even if it's just a couple practices in your daily routine, where you're bringing your body into a state of safety, because that is when it will give you the nuggets you need to know as far as what's beneath your symptoms.
I love that. Well, and I'm writing that down too. Like, again, it's just so important. And I hear this all the time, and I know I'm very intentional with it, is having some of those daily habits and daily routines, and especially in the morning. I think it's really important, and I know a lot of you guys listening might be like, you know what, I work full time, I've got a full plate of life, but get up an extra 20 minutes, 30 minutes early in the morning, so that you can have that intentional time to get your mind right, to fill yourself with, whether it's the Bible or affirmations, or some type of self-development book. I love that you touched on that, or maybe a great podcast. But setting the tone and your mindset from the morning, I mean, and guys, that should be an intentional part of each day, because it's like you're putting on your armor, right? And if you don't make an intentional effort for that, then you're just reacting all day long to all the different things that are being thrown at you, because we all have stuff, we all have things thrown at us. And so I love that you talked about that daily routine, and just really protecting and creating that state of safety. I thought that was so good that you said that too. And and you took me back when you were talking about, just again, the anxiety. I know a lot of people listening to this maybe struggle with anxiety. And when mine was really bad, again, and I'm not saying everyone's up to their own decisions, but for me, I didn't want to take medication for that. And so I learned a self-coping mechanism. And for me, it was essential oils. I would just, when I would feel the anxiety or the panic attack come on, I would instantly tell myself, this is not real. Like, meaning like, I'm going to live through it. It's not any, I'm not going to die. Cause that was where a lot of my fear came from, was just this fear of death, like, that I had. And so anyways, and I, it's interesting you say that, because I almost wonder too, I experienced a really traumatic event between some family members when I was very young, when I was 5 years old, that involved a traumatic death. And so I almost wonder, I never really thought about that, Erika, until our conversation, is that, again, going back to that question that naturopath asked you, like, do you have pent up emotions? And now I'm like, gosh, maybe that's one of my things, is that I experienced that, such a tragedy at such a young age. Maybe that's part of my fear of death, that, whatever. But anyways, but back to the essential oils, is that became my way to just, get through those, panic and anxiety attacks. And, and thankfully, and I think you touched on this, you said they did find some parasites or whatever when you went to the naturopath, and here's the reality. Sometimes there are real root causes that create these panic attacks, anxiety attacks. Toxicity is a very real thing in our modern world. And, I know personally, I've been through a lot of mold testing, heavy metal testing. I had amalgam fillings when I was a child, which had a lot of mercury. And so I do have high levels of heavy metals, as well as mold. There's a whole story I could go on to that too. But, I do think it's, if you're having some weird symptoms, I love, Erika, that you did seek out the help of a naturopath and find someone that would help you get to more of the root cause of some of your issues. So anyways, okay. All right. So I know I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but you're just, so many great things. But so as we kind of move along here, I just would love to ask you, what are some commonly overlooked components of healing, the one's relationship with the body, that you want people to know about, that maybe these are some things that they don't think about, that you want to make sure that you bring to the light? So what are some things that you would like to share with our listeners about that?
Yeah, it's like it's so interesting. What's coming up today is different just based on what you just said than maybe what I'd say a different day. But I think one of the best things you can do is like make it as easy as possible for your body to heal. Like look in your environment and see, like even in your home setting. I love that you brought up the I can't talk toxic exposure, because while I had thought like I was prioritizing my health for so long, I was slathering chemicals all over my body and spraying them all over our house
Yeah.
and washing my clothes in them for so long. That was actually one of the last pieces for me to have. And I mean, I'm not blaming myself. Like I didn't have awareness around it
Right.
until much later. But and as a side effect, my whole family got healthier because they also benefited from all the
Yeah.
chemicals coming out of the house.
Yeah.
But like even something like that can make it harder. I mean, like I had hormonal imbalances, and like one of the biggest things like fragrance and things like that, can really interfere with is your
Yes.
hormones. And
Yes.
so that that was a big thing for me, just realizing like looking around my house and like what in my environment is actually making it
Mhm.
harder for my body to heal,
Yes.
as well as like, I mentioned that I had trouble sleeping.
Mhm.
And I mean, at one point I went on medication, which made me feel horrible. And
Mhm.
that never worked. I mean, I thought I had tried all these things, but the reality is I had horrible sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
And so like realizing like, okay, I need to take ownership for the fact that I'm on my screen until the wee hours,
Yeah.
right before bed. And I'm not doing anything to like help my body, like signal to my body that it's time to wind down, whether that's reading or a slow stretch practice or a warm bath. And so I really had to prioritize. Like if I want to heal, I have to be sleeping. I mean, every natural health
Yes.
person is going to tell you that. And
Yeah.
I knew it to be true. And so that was another thing. And I was like, I'm making this harder on my body when I'm not really willing to look at how I'm not preparing my body well for rest, like in the evenings. And so, I mean, I got a pair of blue blocking glasses and really just totally redid how I did my night routine, which actually meant that I say no to most things at night now, like most outings and activities, because being exposed to super bright artificial light right before bed is not going to help me sleep. And after so many years of not sleeping, I'm actually really not willing to compromise on that now.
Yeah.
So I might be no fun at your party, but because I'm going home at 8, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, it's just so important to me. So like
Yeah.
looking at some of the lower hanging fruit like that, I think
Mhm.
is really, really key, that often gets overlooked. Like
Yeah.
they don't think like, oh, my deodorant could be causing me to
Yes.
have this hormonal imbalance.
Yeah.
We just don't think about that. So
Yeah. No, that's so good. Well, and those are some changes too. Like I don't know if you are familiar with each and every deodorant, but I love it. It's very toxin free.
Mhm.
So we switched up our deodorants, all of our just the things that we wash our clothes in,
Yeah.
our detergents, our cleaning supplies. I started to get a lot of chemical sensitivity. And so, and gosh, we could do a whole episode on this, but we all have these buckets, right?
Yeah.
And here's what's so fascinating. I went to a big conference several weeks ago, a paleo conference in Texas. Oh, now I lost my train of thought. What I was going to say, I went off topic and now I forget. But what was I saying before I said that? Before I went to the
How,
paleo conference?
how you guys were cleaning out
Yeah.
what you washed your clothes in. Was it related to the essential oil?
No, it wasn't. And I see right there, brain fog, hormones. Yeah, I've
Happens to
got
me all the
as
time now.
well, and I have
Admit.
menopause going on here. So goodness, that's gonna bug me. But anyway, so no, but I love that you touched on those things, because a lot of people, and I learned this is something different. I don't know what it was I was gonna say, but like 68% of toxins are absorbed through our skin. So like, even though we can control our environments, and I love that you talked about some of the low hanging fruit, we still a lot of times we can't help it. Like we are going to be absorbing toxins because of the world that we live in. And so it's just like you said, it's good to educate yourself, to be knowledgeable about that. And and I don't even know that, again, if this is what I was going to say, but just about how we all have these different buckets. Oh, this is what I was going to say. There we go. Okay. So one of the presenters at this conference talked about how when we are born, some of us, our buckets are already starting to fill up with toxicity in utero. He talked about how in his own family, his wife, and he did this fascinating kind of experiment to where his wife's mom ended up getting breast cancer, which I guess breast cancer can sometimes be caused from high levels of lead. And so they ended up testing his wife and their daughter, and both of them had very similar, extremely high levels of lead. Now, they weren't showing any symptoms yet, but when he learned that correlation between the high levels of lead and breast cancer, and then was like, well, and then realized that that's something that can be passed down 4 different generations in utero. Like there are literally babies that are born already with some high toxic loads, if that makes sense. So again, I mean, these are just little things that, it's important to just kind of be aware of. And, and toxins, are the number one cause of inflammation in our world. And inflammation is the cause of so many diseases and health issues. And so, I'm a big, nerd when it comes to researching toxins and toxicity. So again, I love that you're giving the listeners just some tips and things to help with that. And the sleep, you couldn't be more right. I mean, it's so important that we are working with our body in that circadian rhythm, right? Kind of just getting, and I shared earlier, like I would stay up till 2 a.m., right? And then get up at like 6 a.m. and live on 4 hours of sleep. Where now, I mean, I'm like, when the sun sets around here, I mean, literally like within an hour, I'm starting to wind down. I try to go to sleep, within an hour or two after sunset, and then wake up kind of as the sun is rising. And again, that's going to maximize your REM sleep, which is where the healing really takes place. So I love that you shared that. All right. So as we kind of land the plane here, what do you think, Erika, is the single most important thing that someone who's listening right now, that they could step into today and help them love their body, trust their body, and just move forward with more confidence when it comes to just taking care of themselves, and just would love to hear your input on that.
Yeah, it's such a big question.
I know.
Yeah, such a huge question. I think one thing to start with is to maybe pull out a journal and ask yourself, like wherever you're starting from when you hear this, if my relationship with my body was the single most important relationship in my life, how would I treat it? What time would I invest into it? Like, how much would I show up for it? If I really believed that. And I think for me, it really took me seeing it. It took me being completely deprived of health, like from that crisis, to realize that it is the most important relationship in my life. And the health of everything else around me is dependent on like how well I'm actually tending to my own inner garden, because that is the only thing I can really do. Like that is the only thing that I have the power to tend to and to change and to prioritize. And I think especially I'm even learning now in pregnancy and just like all the different stressors our family's been trying to relocate, this like journey for like a year-long process. And it's had a lot of stress involved, and every person is experiencing it differently in our family. But what I have to keep coming back to is that as a kid, it was programmed in me really young to try to manage the emotional climate around me. Like I thought that was very important for me to try to learn other people and like figure out, which is why I've always been so fascinated with psychology and that sort of thing. But I never thought like, oh, but wait, like what if really the only thing that I can actually learn like and regulate and is my responsibility is like myself. So yeah. I think that is just coming back to like, that is the most important thing you can do. If it's the most important relationship in your life, are you at least doing one thing that invests in that relationship on a daily basis? And what could that be? I mean, even better if you could do 2 or 3, things. But I think for me, like in my early 20s, like there was so few things I was actually doing to invest in my own growth, whether that's like emotional, spiritual, mental, physical. So much of what I did at the root of it was just taking care of everyone else and looking good to the outside world and pleasing and, people approving of what I was doing with my life instead of like actually what was true for me and my purpose.
Yeah. Well, and you just hit something that I think again is so huge, is that especially with the world of social media, it's easy to get caught up and watching what other people are doing and not focusing on just taking care of yourself. Like, oh, I need to be doing this and that and running this and doing that because, oh my gosh, I see all these other moms or parents out there and they're doing a million things and I need to do more. And, and you touched on like, sometimes the best thing that we can do is say no, to protect our own wellness and to protect our own peace, and learning when to say yes and learning when to say no. I think that's so good that just people, and I'm a person of faith. And so, that's something that I really had to teach myself is, what, I don't make like these instant decisions anymore like I used to. I'm like, what, I'm gonna pray about that. I'm gonna, just kind of hit pause and really pray about that and think about that. One of the best investments that I've made with my health is buying an infrared sauna. And so I love my sauna time, and it's just a place to go and just, not have my cell phone, and just be still and just really have that time to really marinate on some of the choices and things, and if they're really a good decision or not. So so I love that you touched on that. But all right, well, this has been absolutely amazing, and I'm cracking up because I'm looking at the clock, and I told Erika, I'm like, okay, we need to keep this to like 30 to 45 minutes tops. And I feel like we've gone over that today, but it has gone super fast. And again, I think the greatest thing that I love about you, Erika, and just this interview today is that you have been so vulnerable and you have been so real. And I know that there are people listening to this. In fact, I have some people very close to me that I'm like, they have to listen to this episode, because I think especially, I could be your mother. I mean, you're so young, and I'm like, man, I just think you're really going to connect to some of our younger listeners to really help them, find some more peace and strategies and tips and tools, and just bring awareness to things that maybe aren't talked about. And, so again, I just appreciate your authenticity with sharing so many of the things you talked about today. So, I always like to give my, or host, or not host, you're not my host, you're my guest. There you go. Now I'm struggling for words here. I always love to give my guests kind of like a last, word or last piece of advice that you just want to share from the heart to the people listening. And so I just want to give you that opportunity, whatever comes to mind. Just what would you like to say to our listeners as we kind of wrap this up today?
I think one of the biggest things, and I actually heard this from Dr. Don Wood. He's down in Florida. He does trauma healing, super amazing. I've had him on my podcast, but he has this phrase that he tells everyone they come into his office that like, nothing is wrong with you. Like nothing is wrong with you. And I think that was a belief I had from such a young age. Like deep down, I just believed something was wrong with me because I didn't understand that, anxiety is so common and for so many reasons. Like, I mean, our world is just a constant big trigger in every way, so it's like, whatever it was, I just felt like an abnormal kid because of the things I struggle with from a young age. And so I think it's important to realize like what you're dealing with is not your identity. And that might sound cliche because I know that's tossed around a lot, but just to realize, like, I know for me as part of the process of healing, I realized, oh my goodness, like I am a very creative person. I have all of these ideas and there's so much more to me than being someone who's sick and trying to heal and get better and fix my body. And so, yeah, I mean, I would just leave with that that phrase of like, just know that nothing is wrong with you and you are not your illness. You are not your symptoms
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah. And I love that so much. I wrote it down. And I think too, like one that I tell myself is that I'm already healed. Like I'm already
Mm,
healed. And
yeah.
that would be something that, I've shared in just speaking life over myself. Because
Mhm.
again, I've too have come from a place of just some self-sabotaging thoughts. And again, it's about getting that mindset straight. And so I just think it's so fascinating. So Erika, so here you were, and I know I said that was going to be the last thing, but you're just so intriguing here. So, so there you were, in your in your childhood and in your teens. I would just love for you to just give some hope, to our listeners today. Like, how would you describe your life today? Like, and just, how would you describe it to where you are today from where you've come from? And just, maybe just kind of expand on that a little bit, just to give hope to people.
Yeah, I think the biggest change, I mean, I'm only 28. So,
Gosh, yeah,
so,
you're still a big, yeah,
so I have a ways to go in the life journey. I feel like
yeah.
as far as like unraveling a lot of it, but I would say where I am today is like one of the biggest things that feels so good is that like I finally feel safe and at home in my own skin.
Mm,
Like I genuinely love that I am me. And I think
mm,
that is something I could never have said like my whole childhood. And realize that like all the ways that I was different as a kid, whether that was among my peers or just feeling like I didn't fit into my family or whatever, I now see it all as like it is so meant to be. It's my
mm.
unique contribution to the world in so many ways. And I'm
Yes.
starting as I've moved out of the just like sick like way of being,
Yeah.
I'm starting to see what those unique contributions are and to like take joy in creating them and giving them to the
Yeah.
world, like with the start of my business. So
Yes, that's awesome. So, and I, of course, we're going to put this in the show notes, but how can people connect with you? Do you have like a website? Do you have some resources that could really help our listeners today? I just want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that.
yeah, absolutely. So I do have a website. It's www.worthwellness.org. And then I'm on Instagram at Worth Wellness by Erika. I have a podcast also called the Worth Wellness Podcast.
Hmm.
You can find that wherever podcasts are heard. And then I offer body partnership coaching as well, which you can access the info to that on my website.
Oh, nice. Well, awesome. Well, I definitely can't wait to check out your podcast and just your other resources. Thank you so much for just being so generous with your time today, with your sharing your story. Again, I'm a firm believer. It's the struggles and the stories that really, go out there to change the world for people. And again, just thank you so much for that. And just want to thank all of you guys again for being on here today. And again, you guys can also visit my website, dawnfunk.com. I'm a huge just person that loves to add value and, just give resources to help you in your wellness journey. And so I've got like a downloadable cool detox cookbook that you guys can check out. And then being a former English professor and a reading teacher, I'm an avid reader and I believe so much in books and taking ownership of our health through reading. And so there's a great downloadable book list of some of my favorite wellness books that you guys can check out. Although I need to add one that I'm reading right now. I was telling Erika, I'm reading a book by Dr. Mercola, which has been amazing. So I need to get that one added too. But thank you guys so much for being on here today. A huge, huge thank you to you, Erika. And we're going to be praying for the safe delivery of your baby
Oh,
here in the next
thank
10
you.
weeks. And just so excited. You are about to enter just an absolutely magical season in your life and just soak up every single second because it goes by so, so fast. And I'm sure
Mm.
you've already heard that. And I just think it's so amazing. Just, the work that you're doing and the people that you're helping. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Dawn. It's been a pleasure. So fun to
Yes.
talk with you.
Yes. Thank you so much.